Tennessee football has been given the fourth best odds, tied for the third best odds to win the SEC championship. Is that too high? Is that too low? Or is that just right? We're going to roll in and talk about that right now. Tennessee's SEC title odds, we're going to talk about right now. According to FanDuel, Tennessee is at a plus 700 to win the SEC. That's tied with Alabama for third. Ahead of them are Georgia at plus 390 and Texas at plus 210. Now, I have no real problem with the SEC title odds, Tennessee being tied for third. I really don't have a problem with them being tied with Alabama for third, largely because I've told you guys how much I believe in Kalen DeBoer long term. He's got his coach. He's got his quarterback now. He's going to have his quarterback. He has his offensive coordinator back with him. He's got a lot of things working in his favor. So there's a big reason to believe in Kalen DeBoer. My issue with this report, with these odds, is this. How in the world can Tennessee's SEC title odds, and this is an honest question now, how in the world can Tennessee's SEC title odds be tied for third with Alabama, but their win totals on FanDuel are tied with Georgia and Texas for number one? So in case you guys don't understand what I'm saying, Tennessee, their win total is set at 9.5. The same number as Georgia and the same number as Texas. Alabama's is set at 8.5. That's tied for first with Tennessee. Alabama's second, tied for fourth, actually, with LSU, both at 8.5. How could Vegas sit there and say Tennessee's projected to win one more full game than Alabama, but at the same time, Alabama and Tennessee have the exact same odds to win the SEC title? Furthermore, how can you say Tennessee's odds to win the SEC title are at plus 700? And how could you have Georgia so much higher at plus 390 and Texas so much higher at plus 210 when you're sitting there, if you're Vegas, saying that Tennessee, you're projecting them to win the exact same number of games as Georgia and Texas? This doesn't make any sense. Now, obviously, where this comes in is you're going to say schedule strength, non-conference schedules. Maybe one of them plays a tougher non-conference slate. Well, let's break that down. Tennessee plays Syracuse in non-conference play. Alabama plays at Florida State and Wisconsin at home. Anybody who watched Florida State last year think Alabama's going to lose that game at Florida State? Yes, they played two Power 5 games or two Power 4 games with Wisconsin at home too. But who really thinks they have a legitimate chance to lose either of those games? I don't. I honestly don't. What about Georgia? Georgia's non-conference schedule is Marshall, Austin Peay, Charlotte, and Georgia Tech. How could you look at that and say that their non-conference schedule gives them the same win total as Tennessee? No, it's going to be based on the conference win total. Guys, the reason I'm bringing this up is conference win total is going to determine the SEC champion and who plays for it in this totally imbalanced scheduling of the SEC that's so ridiculous. How in the world could you say Georgia has such greater odds if you think they're going to win the same number of games, particularly when Tennessee at least has a much tougher non-conference game in Syracuse? That doesn't make sense. Let me go to Texas, who, again, Tennessee has the same win total as Texas, but significantly worse odds. That's the one break I'll give you. Texas visits Ohio State first game of the year. Okay, I understand that. I understand how you can set Texas win total at 9.5, the same as Tennessee's and Georgia's, while when they're visiting the defending national champions at the beginning of the year. They might even be underdogs in that game. I don't know. You guys can let me know if Vegas has set the if Vegas has already set the win total for that game. But I don't understand how you could have Tennessee so much lower than Georgia and then have them at the same odds as Alabama. I'm baffled by it. You guys can tell me if I'm missing something. To me, this totally doesn't make sense. Okay. And I think FanDuel has been very inconsistent with a lot of what they've been predicting with Tennessee. I don't think there's some anti-Tennessee bias for those who are going to suggest it before it gets out there. Vegas doesn't do that. Okay. Let's be very clear. Vegas has no incentive to be anti-Tennessee. That would never make sense for them, largely because that Vegas has a stake in this. They're trying to make money. So I'm going to set the poll question. Tennessee given, let me pull this up real quick. Tennessee given plus 700 odds. Tennessee tied with Alabama for third best odds to win SEC. Put these plus 700. That is too high, too low, just right. And you guys vote on that and you let me know what you think.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones.
Guys, welcome back. I'm sorry. I apologize. Wi-Fi issue. Glad to be back. I was talking a little bit about Tennessee and their SEC title odds. You guys let me know where it left off. I guess where I was talking is if I was setting Tennessee's odds and I was FanDuel, I would set Tennessee at 8.5, not 9.5, because Tennessee consistently under Heupel has lost to Georgia. They've lost to good teams on the road, and they've lost a game they shouldn't have. Happened every year. Well, they play Georgia next year. They play Alabama and Florida on the road, and both teams I think are going to be good next year. We know Alabama will. And then you add a fourth game that they lose somewhere that they're not expected to lose. So I would actually set their win total at 8.5, not 9.5 for the over-under. However, if you're Vegas and if you're setting their win total at 9.5, I mean, it's hard to make the case that they should have the same odds as Alabama. That's where I was at. So I'm having real issues with the way they've set this whole situation up on FanDuel. But let's also just take a step back and think about this from perspective. Tennessee is in the same boat to win the SEC as Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. That's a pretty impressive crop to be in. We're not talking about this enough. Tennessee was one of 3 SEC teams to make the college football playoff last year in a league of 16. When's the last time Tennessee was a top 3 SEC team? Okay. Tennessee is considered a top 3 to 4 SEC team this year. Honestly, when you think about that, think about some, let's have some perspective here, guys. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not believe from 2008 all the way through 2021 when Josh Heupel first took over, I don't think Tennessee ever finished in the top 3 in the SEC. I don't think they were ever considered one of the top 3 SEC teams. I certainly don't think they ever were given the 4th best odds or better to win the SEC. So when you take that into account, let's give a little bit of grace to Josh Heupel and Tennessee. They did finish top 3 in the SEC in 2022. That is true. But Alabama did finish higher, and Georgia made the college football playoff, and LSU played for the SEC championship. But even though Tennessee draxed LSU and was the better team, I'm just pointing that out. But look, Tennessee expected to do it again really does stand out, and doing it with a returning quarterback. And here's the other thing we're underrating here. And we talked about this earlier in the week with Dave and Jimmy. Maybe it was last week. Returning Nico Iamaleava is not getting the pub that it maybe should. Josh Heupel, since he's been at Tennessee, has returned his starting quarterback once from 2021 to 2022 with Hendon Hooker. Look what he did in 2022. That's the best year he had by far. Who's to say he can't take a leap with Nico from 2023 to 2024? Now, you can point out that Cedric Tillman also returned for Hooker in 2022, but then Cedric Tillman got hurt earlier in the year, so Josh Heupel had to turn to new receivers. Just like he's turning to new receivers this year with Brew McCoy gone and Squirrel White gone and Dante Thornton gone, which is probably fine because Mike Matthews now knows the system, and I think Mike Matthews could be a through-the-roof great. We're going to talk a little bit about that, more about that next week. So when you throw that out, you could say maybe, just maybe, Tennessee should be at 9.5 because maybe they're giving Tennessee an extra thing they haven't done in the past just on the concept of them returning a quarterback. So that's kind of interesting on how that could all work out. Now, Victor Roberts says freshman starting at tackle. McCoy is out for a while. Slow your roll. We're going to get to the freshman starting at tackle, Victor. Don't count him out. We're going to get to him in just 1 second. But just to wrap this up, Tennessee at plus 700 to win the SEC. Our poll question, too high, too low, just right. 62% say just right. 14% say too low. 24% say too high. I say, given where FanDuel set Tennessee's win total, it's too low. But given what I think Tennessee should be projected, it's just right. How about that? Splitting the baby here. That's what I did.